would not be wrong at all to say the level of commercial success that the game had caught us by surprise. And even with Demon's Souls, we all knew it really was kind of a niche game. So even on Dark Souls, we felt that, yes, it is a niche game, but it's a niche game that has this huge niche.
Right, right.
We tried to cut out a lot of the fat, right? Warping, for example. You can actually warp from the very beginning of the game. You have items that can actually help you through the game, like life gems, which are health recovery items that were not existent in Dark Souls. Dual wielding, for example, in your combat, and the ability to carry 3 weapons now instead of 2. The level of customization, there's so many things now, there's so many wrinkles that have been added that really enhance your ability to play the game and get to the vital parts quicker and in some ways easier. But does that mean the game is easier? You probably figured out absolutely not.
Right.
Discovery is such a huge part of the game, and you probably saw that, at least glimpses of how that still remains, all the surprises that come through as you play through the game. We like to think we kept as many of the good parts from Dark Souls and put them into Dark Souls 2 in a better way, but we did remove kind of the stuff that was, for lack of a better word, a little bit tedious.
I journey hither and thither on a sort of treasure hunt, you might call it.
You look at the video game as a medium and the way that game developers tell stories. The classic, or kind of the commonly known way, is to show you the cutscene in the movie, and you watch that for a long time, and then eventually you get to start. Whereas Dark Souls was, as you said, definitely you're taking a lot of cues. There's a lot of things being inferred. There's a lot of little things that you pick up and you have to piece together over time.
Right.
And then you're going into the forums, and you're talking to all these different folks, and you're all kind of collectively piecing together the story, which in and of itself is part of the experience of the game, right? That worked really well for Dark Souls, and it's such a unique way to tell the story, just as the gameplay is such a unique way to play. You would think that we'd want to keep that, right? And hang on to it because it is so unique and special. One thing we know with consumers and gamers specifically is that they're not dumb. They're some of the most sophisticated consumers that are out there, and that's a fact. We know that, right? So one thing we didn't want to do is try and do a bait and switch and try and present Dark Souls or even Dark Souls 2 as something that it isn't. That's what's really important for us, is to stay true to what the game is. And so, I was actually on Dark Souls back in 2011, the whole Prepare to Die and everything else. That was stuff that when I tried to come up with it, it was like, why would we do this?
Right.
A lot of people were fearful. They said, you're going to turn people away from it. And I said, actually, we might. But at the same time, we want to be representing the best parts of what this game is out to the public. And what we think is that people will embrace this. People who have that gamer blood in them, that really like a challenge in whatever form it comes in, right? And get to use their brains as well as their gamer skills to get through something. We felt that had meaning, and we felt like, this can help us sell the game in a very unique way. The best way that I could address the DLC question at this time is to say that if you look at the history of this developer and this series in particular with DLC, it's been gone about in a very specific way, and it's been handled and approached in a very specific way. Would the company or the developer deviate from that very specific way, as it had worked well in the past, not only for the developer and the business, but for the fans?
Sure.
Would the developer deviate from that? I'd like to think they wouldn't. I think the best way to answer the question about the next gen, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, is that whether they be for that platform or any platform, From Software always wants to make sure that if they can build something on that platform, that it's as good as it can possibly be. Sure, they took a lot of criticism. We took a lot of criticism for that first, Prepare to Die edition because of it buggy and this and that. But I really don't think people gave enough credit to the developer for actually willing to take that risk and take their baby of a property that was as popular as Dark Souls was, and to basically for the first time put it on a platform that they weren't really that familiar with. And they did it because the fans really wanted it. And so they put themselves out there. They took that risk and said, you know what, it's not going to be the best, but we're going to do it anyway, right? And they learned a lot of things from that experience, and they basically said, okay, the next PC version, we've learned from our mistakes, just like you learned from death in the game of Dark Souls. There's so many different things that have to be considered when you think about, you know, is there a Dark Souls 3 coming? Should we do a Dark Souls 3? And if so, how would we do it? But you know, in terms of the excitement by the fans and the importance to our company, all of our games are of course important. I mean, that's the standard answer that anyone would give out of the company. But From Software, you know, believe it when they say Armored Core, you know, Armored Core 5 and Armored Core Verdict Day to us is every bit as important as Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 is. That's the God's honest truth, because I worked on both games, and I was held to the same standards for what I do for both games. So that's, you know, that gives you a pretty good idea of the mindset.